debates.
Right.
But district attorneys perhaps can.
Right.
And how would we get him in there? I think that would increase your profile.
Right.
And the second question, I'm trying to think of another one that would be, well, I'll think of another
I'll tell
one.
you, he did debate Thomas Kniff, and they did it by Zoom because of when it was. We could certainly, if there's going to be a debate, it would certainly not be by Zoom. You can't force a candidate to debate, but we can certainly put out the challenge. If he doesn't agree to it, you can, make a lot of hay out of that. I anticipate there'll be a debate. It'll be closer to the election date because that's the norm.
Okay, one more. What really struck me during the campaign was I noticed that the police benevolence of the PBA seemed to have an impact on candidates by throwing its support. Would they support a district attorney candidate in Manhattan? Have they already lined up behind Alvin Bragg for their
The
And would
PBA
they turn
has not
around?
supported Alvin Bragg. I sought the PBA endorsement and got it in 2021 when I was running as a city council candidate, which was very unusual for Democrats to do that at the time, because that was the high water mark of defund the police, and I thought it was insane and I thought it was bad for the city, and so I said, you have to work with the police, not pretend like the police are the problem or the enemy. So and yes, I am actively seeking the PBA endorsement. Now, technically Bragg has a primary challenger, so they will endorse after the primary.
I have two questions. One, will you be prosecuting Letitia James for the crimes that she accused of? Second one is that, I know you're pro-choice. If a pregnant woman is a victim of a crime, will you prosecute on behalf of the baby as an individual?
Right. Both great questions. So I would say that, first of all, I don't know if any of you know Sam Antar, but he is the guy who has been a bulldog researching some of the fraud that he's uncovered with regard to Tish James. And it's a very sweet kind of comeuppance because there's appears to be a ton of very verifiable evidence that she did the exact thing that she accused Donald Trump of when she did what we talked about in terms of this lawfare, is using your law office to go after political enemies. So that wouldn't necessarily be the role of the Manhattan District Attorney in terms of jurisdiction issues, but yes, I do think everybody should be prosecuted, and particularly people who made up offenses against other people. For the actual crimes that they were committing. I think, I haven't actually researched that issue very thoroughly, but I do think there's a lot of precedent for, in cases like in homicide cases, charging 2 homicides where it was a pregnant woman. And I will say, I have always been pro-choice and remain pro-choice, but that's another one where the Democratic Party lost its mind because what pro-choice used to mean, was safe, legal, and rare. And that rare matters. Like this idea that now abortion is the greatest thing ever is really stomach churning. And I think that, this is one of those things where reasonable people can disagree, but obviously you want to protect a pregnant woman and protect the child that she wants to give birth to as part of your job of protecting victims of crime.
Oh yeah, Ms. Mott, thanks again for coming today. I'm sure you would probably know. I know it because I commute a lot through Jamaica from Manhattan, from Astoria, Queens, and back and forth. And I'm sure the first question is really just talking with the people the last 10 months. You're probably getting a feeling when you don't mention I'm a Republican or you get out of it because I hate to say it, everyone goes into their tribe. It's just the way the country's been, not naming presidents. It's been like that the last 20 years. Without bringing in tribes, I'm sure when you just say the city, they're coming toward you. The other thing is maybe a suggestion like your counterpart, speaking of Tish James, Michael Henry, he's running for Attorney General. He narrowed it down when he ran 4 years ago, fighting COVID justice, fighting corruption, cost of living. You may want to do a bullet point, something like that, where you just, some people think of Mon, they just think of reducing the train jumpers. Right. Restoring sanity, not smelling dog crap, which is until then that pot that doesn't smell like dog crap. Right. You know what? I like to have a drink. I don't want to smell whiskey in the morning. I don't want to smell dog crap. Right. And then the other question is, I see there was a former Democrat woman running on the independent line. Mm-hmm. Is that are you gonna be ending up running in November? Is it gonna be a 3-way race? And if so, could that bode well maybe for a sneak out? In a three-way race,
Yeah.
by the way.
That independent candidate ran against Bragg in the primary 4 years ago. I don't know too much about her, except the little bit that if you Google her, it comes up that she had some ethics violations when she was a district attorney that I think forced her out of the office. So yes, if she stays on the ballot, if she's running that race, it would be a three-way race. If you go to her website, which I did the other day, she says, as a lifelong Democrat. So she's clearly positioning herself for the Democrat votes to pull, Bragg's Democrat votes. I haven't seen or heard anything other than just the fact that she's running. So, like with all campaigns, you have to wait to see how things shake out and what people are doing. But we're certainly taking a look.
Yes.
Yes, Phil.
Maud, on behalf of all of us, I just want to say thank you for running against Alvin Bragg. In fact, on behalf of all common sense New Yorkers. And I just have one question for you. As a birthday girl, what is your top wish? And how will you achieve it?
Top wish right now. Well, look, I want to fully fund this campaign, and I want to get all the right endorsements that I need to make sure that we can make this a really, truly competitive race. That's what I want, because it can be a competitive race. We have to turn it into one, and yeah, that's my wish.
Victory!
Yeah.
Victory!
Victory, victory.
I want to compliment you on dealing with a lack of professional courtesy by too many people in the room. There are a lot of correctional facilities in that county that you're running in. Do you have any you go to dance.
Yes.
Do you have any those corrections officers? What do you feel is the posture that needs to be changed in those buildings?
Well, I'll tell you what's really, we didn't touch upon it, but it's a huge issue with regard to public safety. The last worst thing that Bill de Blasio did to our city was his lunatic plan to close Rikers Island and open borough-based jails. I live not that far away from what we used to call the Tombs, the Manhattan House of Detention. It's gone. It's like a pile of rubble on the ground right now. And the numbers were always insane. Rikers Island, even when they were passing this law to close down Rikers Island, had over 5,000 people in Rikers Island at the time, sometimes over 7,000 people in Rikers at any given time. The borough-based jails were each set to have somewhere between 1,100 and 1,200 people, meaning that at full capacity, you would have beds, capacity for 4,400 inmates. Well, what do you do when you have 7,000 inmates in Rikers Island and you're spending billions of dollars to build an insufficient number of beds in people's communities? I mean, it's so bad on so many different levels. And frankly, there's no better place in New York City to have jails than Rikers Island. And I do think we're going to, we have to see who our next mayor is going to be, but we're already hearing rumblings about, having to change that failed policy law that Bill de Blasio brought in. So I think, we've had, Rikers Island has had monitors and issues and problems. What we need in Rikers Island is properly built jails that are up to modern code, because all the people that want to complain about the conditions for prisoners, certainly you want to have safe conditions for inmates in the jail, but also if you build modern jails, you also make it safer for the corrections officers who work in those jails, where you have sight lines where people cannot be cut off from other officers. There's all sorts of things you can do. And the really crazy thing is it would cost so much less to do so much more on Rikers Island than it does to put in these borough-based jails. When I was running in 21, they said it'll be $7.8 billion. Of course it was never going to be 7.8, and now they haven't even started to build anything, and the cost estimate is up to $16 billion. So it's wrong on every single level. I think the most important thing to do is to unspool and unwind that closed Rikers Island plan.
Thank you, ma'am.
Jerry, you tell me how many more.
Many as you want to take.
Okay.
It's a great audience, Dave.
They sure are.
So, as district attorney, is there any way that you can reverse any of sanctuary city policies or start that process?
Any way I can what?
Start reversing some sanctuary city policies or start reversing the sanctuary city policies in New York City, especially when it comes to working with authorities?
Right. No, what district attorneys have is a tremendous amount of discretion in terms of what they prosecute, what they charge, how their office run. You know, you have assistant district attorneys who make decisions. That's why Alvin Bragg's memo was so destructive, because he told the ADAs that work under him, don't prosecute this, don't charge this, don't go after these crimes. With regard to sanctuary cities, obviously you have to work with the federal government, and what we're seeing in California right now is Gavin Newsom and everybody screaming and yelling and running to court to try to prevent the federal government. But what we have, you know, in our system of laws is the supremacy clause, right? This is the federal government actually can override state, you know, laws and
Waste
rules.
taxpayers' money.
Oh, it's ridiculous. But so you have, the best thing to do for New Yorkers is to have the district attorney to have a positive working relationship with the NYPD locally, and to have a positive working relationship with the federal authorities. Now, of course, if there's a genuine issue where you think they're making the wrong decision, but you go and you have, you know, you make whatever intervention you can legally do to say this is not what I think should be happening. But there's no reason not to be working with. And when I worked in the courts for years, you had, whether it was people being extradited to different states, or whether it was a federal, you know, the feds who wanted somebody because they were wanted in federal court on something, it's not a very complicated thing to work with your other jurisdictions to make sure that, you know, that someone who needs to be brought to justice in another jurisdiction can be. So I just think with regard to, I think right now, the sanctuary laws, people are there is I think, a pretty solid understanding that what was passed several years ago and what's happened now with an open border and millions of people pouring in, those things are discordant. It doesn't work. What we used to have was this idea of like, oh, the poor guy who's the busboy in the restaurant, and we're going to have our sanctuary city laws. It was sort of, idealistic, and now people are realizing like, you're not a country if you don't have a border. And when you have millions of people coming in, and all of a sudden, you know, some Pakistani guy who was like, you know, came across the border in Arizona on a Tuesday, and on a Wednesday, he's got shelter in a Tribeca hotel that's costing us all a lot of money and it's like, it's a system that just doesn't work. And I think we understand that. So I don't think that's one. I mean, we have a Republican administration right now who is disinclined to continue some of those policies. So that's one where I think there's a lot of room to make better decisions.
Is there any way that the NYPD can start reporting immigration status for criminals? Is there any way that can start happening in the future, or is that still off the table for now?
Look, I'll say this about Commissioner Tisch. She's made the new police commissioner, the NYPD commissioner. She's made a series of tremendously good decisions, and she's heading in the right direction with some of what she's doing. She has gone up to Albany, and she has said her word was course correction. She was talking about things like bail reform, obviously all the laws that you're talking about, things like the discovery laws, the juvenile justice laws, raise the age. She said we need a course correction because there's only so much she can do as NYPD. We need to change some of those laws. The DA doesn't change the law, the police commissioner doesn't change the law, but she is really a step in the right direction. And you can see that, like, no one's complaining about Jessica Tisch. She's a law and order police commissioner who's trying to restore, you know, some discipline where it was starting to lack, and I think she's doing a good job. So I think that's a positive.
All the way to the back, you can't see it.
Yeah.
I don't know if you were aware of yesterday's home invasion here in Whitestone,
No.
where they tied up the 5 people in their house. And you think we should start getting laws to have stand up your ground here in New York City and bring that back into the forefront so we can protect ourselves as well as protect our family members?
A man's home is his castle is an American truism in the laws of all our states going back to forever. So you absolutely have the right to defend yourself in your home in New York and, you know, every other state. Yes, there are different laws depending on what state you're in terms they've changed the self-defense laws, but I've tried self-defense cases in those courts. We have robust self-defense laws. You can defend yourself and you can defend others commensurate to the amount of force and crime that you're facing. So we have, people are allowed to defend themselves now.
Are there laws on the books now for like homeless people that are just sitting around on the streets to actually get them off the streets? Because some of them are just homeless and some of them are a little out to lunch.
Loitering laws and those violations are always a little bit tough, right? Because you have the ACLU, if you think about the ACLU, thank you, the old school ACLU, when they were actually defending people's rights in a more sane way. But the truth is, to go back to something I said before, when I was working in the courts, Bob Morgenthau was the DA, and there were lots of people that were brought in that as a defense lawyer, I would say, he's just homeless, leave him alone. But you have to, sometimes, you use the laws that are available. The NYPD would arrest people for obstructing pedestrian traffic or for any sort of thing. And sometimes it's a blessing to bring somebody in off the street when they absolutely can't take care of themselves or others. And so I think it's a very misguided philosophy of Alvin Bragg to act like any police intervention is always bad. Sometimes it's actually rather life-saving and rather humane. So I do think that when people are, when you see someone sleeping who can't even use the toilet and they're sleeping on a park bench, leaving them there is not the most compassionate thing to do. So I do think that, and you don't need to change the laws. Can they be challenged? Yes. Sometimes you get those little pesky legal aid lawyers who are like, this is unconstitutional arrest, and they want to fight it. But in general, I think it's better to bring people in off the streets.
So you raise an important issue, and this goes to the ability of the government to take someone off the street. And it's a big deal.
Yeah.
It's a very, very big deal. As a police officer, you can't do it unless they violate the law or you think they are.
Right.
All right. And the courts give a lot of latitude to police operations that way. But when you're talking about the homeless people and the mentally ill, and it's a problem we have in New York, all right, because we haven't settled the mentally ill or the homeless situation at all.
Right.
The state legislature has failed us in that regard. How do you see that as you look out to New York City, the adjoining 62 counties of New York, and then the states across the United States? Do you see any jurisdiction where they've come to terms with that? And are there any solutions?
Yeah, well, oh my God, now we're going to the whole country. Yes, there are some jurisdictions that have been much more aggressive about getting, yes, absolutely, getting homeless folks off the street. But let me give you a good example of where New York gets it wrong and where we could fix it right now, given the laws that we have. Someone mentioned, I think maybe it was Jerry mentioned, the Daniel Penny case. Jordan Neely, the young man who lost his life in that incident, was a deeply mentally ill person. You can both know that Daniel Penny acted honorably and also believe that it's sad that Jordan Neely had to die. And one of the things that I think is so unbelievably sad about that case is he was known to the district attorney's office, he had been arrested multiple times, and they had spent a lot of money giving him supportive housing that he couldn't take advantage of because he was so mentally ill that he didn't stay in that housing. Supportive housing means we're paying a ton of money for someone who's mentally ill to have an apartment that they don't stay in because they go out onto the subways and start harassing people. So we spend a ton of money for it. The mentally ill person doesn't get the help they need, and you're right. People that are on the subways are being harassed and hurt, and Daniel Penny, tried to step up and protect people, and we had this whole trial. So it's like we paid a fortune as taxpayers for interventions that didn't work, whereas if he had been prosecuted for the crimes, and the previous crimes of Jordan Neely were serious. He fractured somebody's skull in an attack, very serious crimes, and he could have been and should have been prosecuted and kept incarcerated. And then what you have, I mean, it's not perfect to have mentally ill people in the criminal justice system, but sometimes it's the only way to compel treatment. Trying to get him treatment outside didn't work. So for people like that, you do, and I've represented lots of people who are very severely mentally ill, you really do need to sometimes use the criminal justice system to get treatment. It doesn't always work, but sometimes it does. And it's so much more humane to get people the help that they need when they don't have any other options.
Are the laws in New York State sufficient enough to do this on the level that we need in New York?
Yes, it's 730, the law that, when you ask for a mental health competency exam for somebody, what we don't have are the beds. we have enough laws that if you have prosecutors asking for, I mean, you can always improve the legal structure, especially with regard to, you know, mental health confinement, but we have the ability, like that's a perfect example of that case. He could have been detained and incarcerated, and then the assistant district attorney could have said to his defense lawyer, here are your options, this state sentence, you know, or this mandatory inpatient treatment center. What we don't have are enough of those beds for the very significant mentally ill population we have that's on the streets. Yes, Steve.
Okay, two quick questions. One, Ray Tierney, our Suffolk County DA,
Yes.
has been very active in going to Albany to get rid of some of these laws, to change the legislation.
Right.
Would you commit to joining with Ray Tierney if you?
I've heard nothing but wonderful things about him, so yes, absolutely.
Second quick point is that our organization, we find voter fraud all over the place, all right? We have 400 voters that voted in New York and in New Jersey on election day, all right? With your office, if you get in, I've already dropped off the information to the Suffolk County District Attorney's Office and asking them to do an investigation. Would your office be willing to look at voter fraud that's taking place rampantly?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't. Why would it be any different than any other fraud? There are laws. People need to follow them, and especially if this is not a one-off. Sounds like you got numbers there. Yes.
What do you think of broken windows policing?
It worked.
So you'll pursue it?
It's what I was talking about before with proactive policing. Like we really saw, you know, I came to New York to go to college. I went to Barnard College in the very end of the 80s, early 90s. And that's when our homicide rate was the highest in this city. That's when we had really a dangerous city. And from that time on, you know, up into, you know, for a decade, 2 decades after that, our city really got safer and safer and safer. And a huge part of that was what is commonly referred to as broken windows policing. And when you police those quote unquote low-level crimes or nuisance crimes or quality of life crimes, not only do you stop those crimes, but you stop more serious crimes. And the fact that Bragg said, we're not doing that anymore, and we've seen the immediate effect, is sort of proof positive. Because some people will say, oh, it wasn't broken windows policing, it was like changing demographics, or it was this, or it was that. But now we have almost the counterfactual, which is, oh no, when you stop doing that, it gets safer and dirtier and less pleasant to live in the city. So now we know for sure. Some of us knew already, but now we know for sure that that works.
Did you say it gets safer?
Yes.
Yes, I just want to mention that this fundraiser is not over tonight. You know, I just wanted to make clear to everyone that the contribution link will be still up on our website, you know, in the, you know, coming days. And I want to say, you know, I want to give a shout out to your campaign manager, Joe.
100%.
And he outlined some of the financial, you know, goals of this campaign to raise $3.5 to $5 million. I just want to state that so everybody realize, you know, why we organize this fundraiser and why it's not over tonight. That you know, we want to reach out and see you know, what we can do going forward. Craig, this fellow over here mentioned to me that Letitia James recently donated $10 million to Alvin Bragg. Is that true, Craig?
I don't know, I'm not sure.
You told me that.
He's a lawyer.
Anyway,
He can have an eye or.
This is what happens at Queens.
Can you elaborate on this?
Just say yes.
How we can reach out, what are the financial goals, how much can individuals donate and so forth?
Yep. So sky's the limit on this campaign. So if you guys know any billionaires hanging around that have $50,000 that they want to contribute, send them my way, because that's the maximum campaign donation amount. low dollar fundraising, I've gotten donations from $10 to $25. It all adds up and it's all important. So we have, we've had a range of donations, which is really wonderful. What we need to do is just keep talking to people and keep the donations coming. I will say this, I've had lots of communities being super generous here in New York, but we've also had donations from all 50 states at this point, because we have people who know, New York, to Jerry's point, and to Joe's point, like New York City matters to the rest of the country. So we have people all over donating. One thing, sadly, I'll point out, we don't have matching funds in this race. We have this super sky-high cap, but no matching funds. It is, while it's a county race, it's run by the New York State Board of Elections, so we're governed by the New York State Board, and it's not in that New York City matching funds. Yeah.
Two questions. One is, when elected, and you're gonna have city council members that are very left-leaning socialists, are you gonna have a problem with them, with some of these policies that your common sense policies you've been talking about tonight? And the other question is, are you having small get-togethers like this? We were just talking about fundraise or other things. Are you getting it from like the left-leaning people from Upper Manhattan and everything? Are they contributing to your campaign, or
The
they're still
left-leaning
staying?
folks, not so much. But I find there's more centrists now than there ever were. There are people that will say, I've been a registered Democrat my whole life, but I can't vote for Alvin Bragg, that kind of stuff. And yes, small get-togethers, people who want to set something up to have me come and speak, I'm more than happy to do that. That's a fundraising, a tried and true fundraising method, and it's definitely something we do. Look, I've been battling with the left-wing nuts in city council, and I'm an elected school board member. I've been dealing with their bad ideas and standing up against them, for a long time now. If you Google me, you'll see that I pick fights with all the right people, all the people with the worst ideas. Okay, last one.
Thank you. Two questions. One is, I forgot her name, de Blasio's wife, going back to the homeless issue.
You want the Thrive money back, right?
Yeah.
So do I.
We're standing here talking about mental health, and there you your problem. That's the answer right there.
I mean, some of the stats on the Thrive grift were so insane. Like the average was like a less than 6 month stay for the administrators who got those high paying jobs, right? Like there was a rotating door of the people who came in and had senior jobs in that.
So that's really why everybody's doing it. It's like you said before, this equals that. That equals this. So why aren't we
one of the
going
things that Alvin Bragg is really not doing, which is prosecuting corruption. And when there's corruption, it's literally looting the public treasure, right? You should absolutely be, in addition to not prosecuting fare beats and robberies and third degree and those kind of things, he's also not aggressively prosecuting corruption. And it should be. I don't know what, the specific statute of limitations are, if and when any formal investigations have happened with that particular program. But the reason why so many New Yorkers think of it as like the, prototypical corruption case is because the numbers are so shocking. When you look at how much money they spent and how little services were delivered to regular New Yorkers.
And the second part is, I know it, I'm really grateful to people who do know that things matter, but I know that my vote doesn't matter. I know that for a fact, because when I spoke up and said it, that people say, I was telling the authorities that I know my vote was stolen, like that man had said, there's anomalies. So on a personal level, it's the government, however the system works, they've made it really clear that as an individual, when you know your vote is stolen, and I can give you facts of how I know, it doesn't matter. Is that ever going to be remedied? Do you have a remedy for that? Is there a way forward? Because that, to me, everything else is off the board now. Like how?
Look, on the voting front, it's not something that I'm going to be able to change as a district attorney. It's not a particular issue in this case, but I will say I 100% think that we should have voter ID laws. There's just no reason not to have. You have to show your ID for the most minor things around. Of course, you should show your ID to vote. Yeah.
I have to say that never a fan of early voting. I always thought that was a Democratic kind of garbage and horror as they fix the vote, etc. And this has been for years, especially under Biden. But I realized last time around that the early voting for Republicans and Democrats made it different for the first time in history. In history.
Right.
And I'll say this because who you voted for that day was determined. If you waited until the poll day in a Democratic crooked district like the boroughs in New York, there were nothing but problems processing all day, processing the votes all day long. There were not said problems processing early voting. And it blew my mind, and I thought, now we have something that we should go with every time.
I think at this point, while we have it, you have to use it to your advantage and get more people out to vote.
Well, two things. One, a little push for Phil and I had wrote an article about Alvin Bragg. It's in the newspaper. We'd like you to pick it up and read it at your leisure. Number two, Queens Business Coalition, which is us. I felt when I met Maud, I liked her. I liked her as a person. I liked her as a politician. Guess what? I even like her better, and I like her more as a politician because she's a real person. I think she's going to work well for the public, and I want to give you guys a shout out because they were a good
You're
audience
amazing. Thank
with
you,
good
guys.
questions. But I want to thank you, and we're going to give you as much support as we can to get you elected.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. My birthday cake now.
Stay, eat, whatever you want to do. The Queens Business Coalition is
I'll follow
Hey
you.
there, how are you doing?